So hi all, welcome to the poster session policy of UC GIS week. As just a reminder, you can see on the screen, we just have a few things. You can modify the settings. You have the chat box. You can ask your Q&A in at any point in time in the presentation. We have the chat box if we need to communicate any information out for you. You will be on mute and you will not have videos. The session will be recorded and available for afterwards. And just a reminder that you can go out and join the Slack space at ucgis.slack.com and join some of the session channels or the help attendees if you have any questions. But we're here for you, and we'll go ahead and get this started. And thank you for sharing that. And yeah, we'll go ahead and get started. And I think if there are, well, let's see, we've got a few more people coming in. So we'll just leave this up for just a few more seconds. But hopefully you were able to attend the morning session. As always, right, when this is the inaugural event and we encounter a few technical difficulties, but hopefully you got something out of it. I know I did, and we'll be able to post everything afterwards. So you'll be able to follow up even those sessions that you're not able to attend. So we'll allow just a little bit more minute to get started here. And I want to say, I want to thank you to our poster presenters today for sort of willing not only to share their poster, but to also talk about their posters. So I think the way that we talked as a team is that we'll go through and each individual will have a few minutes to talk about their poster, show you, interact with it, or what forth. And then we'll take Q&As immediately after. And then we'll also take any Q&As that didn't get handled after each presenter at the end. So, okay, so I think everyone's in. So welcome to the poster session policy. Let's go ahead and get started. And Bingyu, I will go ahead and allow you to share your screen, and Bingyu is going to talk about using GIS to understand regional traffic patterns.
Okay, can everybody see my poster?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so I'll get started. Hello, everyone. My name is Bingyu Zhao, and I'm a postdoc at the Department of Civil Engineering at UC Berkeley. I am a transportation engineer, and specifically I work on city-scale traffic simulations. Because of this nature of my work of looking at the traffic phenomena at the city scale, GIS is not something that is unfamiliar to me or my colleagues working in this field. So for example, we use QGIS, we use GeoPandas and Python visualization, and also some of the fancier software like Kepler GL for doing a variety of different things. We use it to present our results. And I have even used spatial autocorrelation to predict pavement degradation at a city scale. But we usually haven't received any formal training in geospatial information and data processing. So being familiar with it doesn't mean that we are doing it correctly or using the most cutting edge technique. So when I found out about the UC GIS week, I was really excited. I thought this would be a good opportunity for us to communicate and discuss. On my poster, the goal is to send out two messages. The first one is that I want to show some examples so that people outside of the transportation field can understand how we are using GIS in our research. And the second aim is to show some of our struggles, and we want to get the advice from experts on how we can improve our usage of the GIS tools to make our work even better. Okay, so now you can see my poster. I have 4 examples, and the first one is this one. So this shows how we are using the GIS system for acquiring the inputs that we need for our analysis. The image shown here on the left, it is the wildfire propagation in the 1991 Berkeley Oakland Hills fire. It shows how the fire propagates at different times. what we did is that we georeferenced this map and overlaid it on top of our traffic simulations. So we can know at different times how many vehicles are inside this fire. And then we can devise different transportation strategies to help more people to evacuate, like contraflow, changing the signals, and hopefully that can help in terms of the wildfire evacuation planning. And apart from this, like georeferencing maps, we also, many of the other inputs for traffic analysis are also provided in a spatial format. The most typical one is the road network. We download that from OpenStreetMap a lot, and that is provided in a spatial format. So we are quite successful in using GIS for this information acquisition part. And the second routine thing we do with GIS is to present our results using GIS tools. So for example, the picture on the left here, so this shows the New York subway network. So this is actually a collaboration between us and a high school student. The high school student, Abby, she's interested in how people use the subway and road network in New York across different decades. So she went out and collected the number of people checking in into each station at the morning peak and evening peak. She put the data on Google Maps and sent it to us. We run our traffic analysis algorithms and predict what might be the traffic pattern on the subway. And then we put the map on CapitaGL, which is an interactive web-based mapping platform. We shared with her the URL, and then she can zoom in and out and get the numbers and analyze usage pattern. So this is fairly small network. We also work with much larger network. Like the image shown on the right, this shows the road network in the Greater Tokyo area. This network has more than 1 million road intersections and about 2 million roads. And as you can imagine, we were trying to open this map in QGIS or other software. It was very slow. It takes minutes to load. And when we zoom in and want to find out about a small localized area, it takes another few minutes to render it again. So in the end, what we do is that we can only generate static map using this Python package called GeoPandas. So this kind of lead to our struggle in using GIS for large scale analysis, like the example I'm showing here. So many of the traffic analysis programs, we code it ourselves. And when we code it, there are sometimes bugs like the vehicle is not moving or they are turning at the wrong intersections. And having a good spatial visualization can really help us to find the problem and debug the code. But currently I find this a very painful process. What we do is that we generate our outputs from our traffic simulation codes, and then we post-process the results to make it compatible to be presented on a spatial analysis software or like visualization software like QGIS. But as the traffic states updates every second, we kind of need to do that for every second in our simulation. We need to download the data, process it, and visualize it, see the problem, go back and fix the code. And I find this is a very very slow process. So I want to ask for any advice, like if any one of you would have a recommendation on the most suitable tool that we can use that is friendly to developers, which means that we can possibly integrate that in the common programming languages like Python or C++, and that can give us interactive map, and we can analyze the results almost in real time. And if any of you would know such a good software, that'll be really helpful. And another challenge that we have is to use the GIS tools in presenting a story. So what I mean is that so currently we need to generate a map and generate the charts that shows the data related to the map in separate applications. And so I'm thinking if there could be such a program that is powered by an underlying geospatial database. And on top of the database, we build several applications. One is for quickly mapping out the information like a visualization tool. And then on the other side, we can use like spatial analysis tools to quickly analyze the results, showing the trend, showing the distribution, rather than having to do that separately in two different programs. So I think if we have that, it will be really nice. So we encountered something similar called OmniSci, which was provided to us by HP. So I was really happy when I initially saw it. But after using it, I realized that some of the functionalities are still a bit in development. So not ready to be used, in my opinion. So that is the another thing that I hope to get advice on. So basically, this is what I want to present in this poster. I hope you can understand that as a traffic engineers, we use GIS a lot, but in the meantime, we want to get advice from the GIS experts on how we can make use of it better. Thank you.
Thank you, Bingyu. So we welcome any questions from the audience. If you want to go ahead and type in any questions, Bingyu can respond to those. But Bingyu, so, and I do have a question for you while we wait for any to come in. So how much data are you talking about in terms of like the traffic simulation, right? So some of the counts you had mentioned at one point, so you're getting data from every second from sort of this traffic
data.
So
We are looking at city scale traffic, and the points we want to visualize, like spatial points, equals to number of cars that the city has on its road network. So frequently, like a few tens of thousands, or even for very big area, that will be millions. But for that, I understand that it will be quite meaningless to visualize all those millions of cars at the same time. So I think common scale will be thousands, tens of thousands. Yeah.
And where are you pulling those locations from?
We generate them ourselves. We have traffic simulation, like cars following cars and how they stop and how they move forward.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah, but they frequently go to the wrong place.
Any other questions? And I will say, Bingyu, you actually brought up a really good point of, right, so you're looking for feedback on things. And I think one of the things that we can do is in the UC GIS Slack channel, there's also, you know, the idea of to be able to ask these types of questions so that if we run into things, it's like, what are other people using to see how we might be able to improve our own processes.
Yeah. I can make use of that in the future.
Yeah, but this is fascinating, I think, to see. And and I'll also ask one more question of like what city scales are you looking at currently? So you mentioned some from New York, Tokyo.
The smallest one we are working on is Bolinas. Have you heard of this place?
Mm-mm.
Yeah, so it is a small town on the coast north of San Francisco. And it has like about like less than 500 road links, and about 1,200 residents. And this is a very small community, but they are under multiple natural hazard threats like tsunami, earthquake, wildfire. So the community is really interested in if something happens, how they can get out. And so that's we are studying it and how we can make traffic evacuation plans for them. That's the smallest one. And then we work with Berkeley, and then like New York, just a small part of New York, like Paradise for the campfire evacuation. The largest one is for, we also work with the LA area, Bay Area. The largest one is for the Greater Tokyo area, like one of the biggest city in the world. Yeah, and that has like millions of rows. And so each of them, it will be a line string. And we need to visualize all of them.
That's a lot.
Yeah. So it's quite painful. Like for me, I have been using it for a few years, so I kind of expect that. But for some other students who just started, I feel that they cannot get intuitive idea of it because of this bottleneck in spatial visualization. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, if anyone has feedback, please feel free to email me.
Thank you, Bingyu. And I will say, right, all of the speakers, their bios are up online, and you can also find all of these posters from today's session and the next poster session that are available. So they've provided it to us ahead of time, and I'll post in the chat as well where you can access the posters after the session. So Bingyu, thank you so much.
I think I have a question now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I do see one come in.
Can you tell some examples of applications of the traffic simulation? Oh yeah, so traffic simulations is helpful in a way that real life traffic experiments are very costly and impossible to be conducted. So that's why we build simulation models to test different scenarios. Some of the scenarios we test are like wildfire evacuation. What if we can ask people to leave faster, or what if they can share cars? What if we close some roads and ask people to use other roads? And other examples include like post-earthquake, like if there's earthquake in the Bay Area, what will be the change in the travel time, and how's the impact on the economy because of the increase in travel time, and also like emissions, noise. So these are the examples of application. Thank you.
Thank you, Bingyu, for catching that before we transition.
Yeah, thank you.
So, okay. And if you have more questions, keep bringing them in, and we can open them up to everyone at the end of the session. So let's go ahead and transfer it now over to Elizabeth, whose poster is Yes in My Backyard, a spatial analysis of ADU interest in the city of San Diego. So Elizabeth, go ahead.
Thank you, Amy. Hi, everyone. It's great to see you today. I hope you can see my screen right now. I completed this poster on behalf of UC San Diego's urban planning capstone requirement. So in March of 2020, I graduated from UC San Diego with a degree in urban studies and planning. And as part of that program, we complete a 6-month research practicum on an area that we're interested in. So for me, that was housing, and particularly emerging housing trends such as accessory dwelling units, and using accessory dwelling units to satisfy the need for increased housing supply here in California. Additionally, I'm currently a master's in urban and regional planning student at UCLA. Housing is my concentration there, but I am pretty new to GIS. I really honestly learned GIS only in the past year. And I think planners in general, we in undergrad and grad school were taught the importance of GIS, but it's becoming more evident as we enter the profession that GIS in the planning profession is more in a silo. It's not necessarily something that's integrated into the development process. We're not really thinking about how can we analyze data throughout the housing development process as opposed to just being an afterthought. So this project relied on ADU permit application data from the city of San Diego. Why did I choose that? So the city of San Diego, like many other cities, they release weekly permit activity reports that summarize all the projects going on throughout the city. And I took all of that data and I wanted to see what ADU development looked like in the city. And the reason I did that is because ADUs have been a recent housing topic that's a huge hot topic in California legislation the past couple of years. We've had a lot of state bills that have been passed to look at how can we reduce the cost to build accessory dwelling units? How can we make the requirements easier in a lot of cities, whether that's through height restrictions, lot sizing, things like that. And I really wanted to do ADUs and specifically look at the interest in ADUs because there's a lot of disparity between what people are hoping to build versus what actually gets built in the housing market. So as I mentioned, this data relies on weekly permit activity reports. I went through 2017 all the way to the end of 2019, and I geocoded by address all of the permits that were in the city of San Diego system for ADUs. Now you're probably hearing this and you're wondering, well, wouldn't it be more interesting if the city already had these spatially available? And that's a huge yes. It goes to show that there's a huge disparity between research and analysis in the actual profession and public practice of developing housing. If having analysis and thousands of pages of PDFs summarizing our projects are just an afterthought. So I wanted to bring a spatial component to ADUs and the housing development scene in San Diego. I specifically wanted to look at interest in ADUs, and this is what we came up with. So this project was completed over the course of 6 months. Had I had another 6 months, I would have loved to compare this with some ground truthing to see which of these permit applications have actually been built throughout the city. And what I really wanted to do here overall, in addition to looking at which neighborhoods within the city of San Diego are experiencing rapid growth in housing, especially ADUs, I wanted to compare it to other aspects of what makes a neighborhood desirable for increased housing. So things like transit accessibility, average income, household income of that neighborhood, and also senior population. So a lot of the current research regarding accessory dwelling units and granny flats is that they're mostly being built by people who have an elderly family member, they have a young college graduate that needs a house to live in rent-free with mom and dad. So I wanted to see how that's actually playing out in San Diego. So there are a ton of different data layers using both these geocoded permit applications as well as various census tract information on the story map that I produced, and you can find that under the poster session link for this today, and you can play around with those data layers. But yeah, and so this map overall shows for each year the number of permits that we had on the neighborhood level. Claremont, college area, those are the two top ones. And there's a lot of disparities between each of these neighborhoods. Claremont in particularly is more of a single family, low density neighborhood versus college area. It's surrounding SDSU. For those of you who are students there, great to see you. And what I did was I wanted to really look at the granular level of how each of these neighborhoods is experiencing housing development differently, particularly interest in actually building these housing units. So this graph here categorizes each neighborhood by year. And just looking at this right off the bat, we see Claremont, college area. North Park, San Diego, it's a much more high density urban environment. We also have a lot of older homes in that area that have actual square footage for things like a addition or a conversion of unused housing space. But we also see different trends, like for instance, southeastern San Diego, City Heights, they weren't experiencing much ADU interest in 2017 and 2018, but policy interventions like the impact fee waiver, or actually there were a couple of different fee waivers that the city of San Diego passed to help expedite the ADU process. And those were effective because some of the more low income neighborhoods within San Diego started having rapid interest in ADUs. And we see this throughout too in, if I can zoom in, I go to income. We see this in how income plays into the interest in ADUs across the city. So it's great to see that people who don't necessarily have a lot of disposable income to build an additional unit are not being hindered from the development process. People are wanting to generate more housing in their own backyard in whatever way they can, whether that's to provide housing for a family member, to generate additional rental income, things like that. So overall, there's a lot of intersection that housing can be looked at on the census tract level with things like transportation, things like senior population, income, household size. And overall, what really something that I loved about this project is that it contextualized housing development to be at the neighborhood level as opposed to a top-down approach coming from city council and these regional projections that we see coming from an office at the MPO in regards to housing and which neighborhoods should be producing more than others. And I think this really, for me personally, this taught me that there's a huge opportunity in how we approach both the development process and city housing policy by incorporating a spatial component in how we actually track data. This all could easily be replicated if cities like San Diego automatically assigned a spatial component to their permits. They already have things like Trackit, Web Extender to log those on a project management side, but they're not actually incorporating a spatial aspect and let alone really readily accessible and digestible to the public. So yeah, this is my poster. I would love to expand on this in my second year at UCLA as a housing and urban planning student, so I might do that. But I'd love to hear your questions, any feedback you may have. And if you're further interested in learning about this topic, please feel free to look at the poster online, look at the story map that was attached to it, and play around with the different data layers. So thank you.
Thanks, Elizabeth. So while we wait for any questions to come in, Elizabeth, could you actually zoom in a little bit more on the story map link? I tried to get that with my phone and I couldn't do that. So yeah, for those that are interested, I'll say this was exciting. I was able to work with Elizabeth in her final year and sort of looking at some of this. And I think the data is really fascinating to be able to look at ADUs, right, in that process between what the city is providing and also how easy it is to do some research. Yeah, so what were some of the biggest takeaways that surprised you the most from this research?
I found it really interesting to look at the actual data versus the perceptions of accessory dwelling units and granny flats within the city of San Diego. So there's a lot of NIMBY stigma surrounding additional housing and concerns about things like short-term rental units, increased traffic, things like that. And those are things that I would definitely love to pursue further with this data now that this is a baseline. But I found it really interesting that in neighborhoods such as La Jolla and Pacific Beach, there really weren't many applications for ADUs. And that kind of goes to show that people are not necessarily interested in ADUs as an Airbnb opportunity. I'm sure that still happens, but the city of San Diego has been cracking down a lot on short-term rental ordinances and different policy interventions to help combat that. But I think the data definitely plays to show that the NIMBY stigmas surrounding increased housing opportunity are not always true. And you know, I was pleasantly surprised too, like I said, to see that ADUs are not necessarily income restricted. So we're seeing interest throughout the city, whether it's in low income neighborhoods or high income neighborhoods. And that just goes to show you that the housing market and the need for more affordable housing is not limited to one group. So.
That's great.
And I think I'd also add to this too, before we wrap up, that I'd love to hear if any public sector practitioners are on board, if they have any comments on this, because it was particularly fascinating to me, both as an emerging planner and as somebody who's new to GIS, how data can be super disorganized, and things like this, assigning just a spatial component in an Excel document and geocoding each of these permits each week, that really doesn't take a ton of time, but you know, we can get a lot more from it if we incorporate processes like this as opposed to just having thousands of pages of PDFs. So
yeah. And Elizabeth, that's a great permit. So we have another question that's come in. Is the 2017-2019 ADU permit application data free to the public?
Yes, all of this was publicly available data. So the city of San Diego, like many other cities, each week they produce a PDF that has all of the different projects that people applied for a permit for. So things like whether it's a liquor license, a demo license, a grading permit, and ADUs. So the city will assign a project code. So what I had to do is go through each PDF for each week, 2017, 2018, and 2019, and extract all those project codes, put them into an Excel sheet with the address. I also read the project description to try to identify, is this an ADU that's a detached unit? Is this somebody converting their garage? Is this somebody converting a basement? And you can see that online on the story map too. But yeah, so this is all publicly available data, and you know, it lacked a spatial component in its prior form, and I hope they would continue to rethink how they're presenting it and tracking it, because in my experience, you know, they're using platforms internally in their department to track permits, but there's no spatial component to those. So.
And Elizabeth, that makes me think, we finished working right when COVID started to really kick off. So let's follow up, because I want to make sure that we do get that data available that you generated from all of this for future students to be able to use as well. So let's have a follow-up on that.
Yeah, definitely. And this is all available on UCSD's GIS hub already as data layers, but I'd love to see further research on this both within San Diego and other cities. I'm currently in LA, and I'd love to see how Los Angeles and LA County are incorporating this, because a lot of cities, and especially too the city of Encinitas right here in San Diego County, they're doing a lot of work to increase ADU development. So things like fee waivers, readily available blueprints for people to cut down on the construction and development costs. So it's a big issue.
That's great. Okay. Thank you, Elizabeth. And so let's go ahead and switch it over now to Claire. And Claire is going to talk about visualizing homelessness in Los Angeles. So Claire, if you want to go ahead and share your screen, and go ahead. And we can see your screen, so.
Perfect, thank you. Hi everyone, I'm Claire. I just graduated from UCLA with a major in psychology. And being a psychology major, while we did a lot of research, it was very much simply like restricted to, empirical data, running experiments, and then looking at the data. So taking up GIS initially as a GE was like a fresh of breath air for me, especially because I love traveling, and then looking at pretty maps just kind of makes me really happy. So yeah, I was really happy to take up GIS, and I do have a special interest in cartography. And because taking GIS kind of introduced me to this world of data analysis, it motivated me to explore this whole world a little more, and I'm currently pursuing a Master of Social Science at UCLA. Wasn't ready to leave, but yeah. So today my posters, it's actually a Google site, and before I go into it, I just wanted to shout out that Google Sites is a really good platform for website creation when you don't really have coding knowledge. So like when I created this, I literally like didn't know how to code at all. But yeah, so it's very friendly for people who like basically are not as comfortable with using code to create websites. And that's what I did. It was very drag and drop. So this was actually my final project for the cartography class I took last fall. And I decided to do it on homelessness because it is an issue that's particularly prominent in California and very much apparent in LA. And cities like LA have been trying to alleviate the problem for many years, but given the magnitude and the complexity of the problem, progress has honestly been really slow. And it is my belief that proper data visualization is a step in the right direction, because we need to understand the problem before we can come up with policies to tackle it. And data visualization, like I think what Elizabeth touched on, where you can kind of see it in a more comprehensive way rather than just a ton of PDF documents, is really helpful. Yeah, so on this Google site, like I mentioned earlier, it was really good, easy to kind of put it together because it was very drag and drop when it came to images. And then these texts were kind of like just little additional text, kind of like captions to help build up the narrative. So yeah, so there are a total of 3 maps on my site. The first one that you can see right now is homeless population by service planning area within LA County. Yeah, so what I did was basically looked at the populations of individuals experiencing homelessness within LA County in this choropleth map, and it became pretty clear that the biggest concentration of individuals experiencing homelessness are found in Metro LA service planning area. And something that I did was overlay the metro lines so that the relationship between homelessness and public transportation can really be exhibited. And this map did make it pretty clear that individuals experiencing homelessness do tend to be found around the areas where public transportation networks service. So that was the first map, and clearly like Metro LA was the only one that kind of had this like especially high concentration of individuals experiencing homelessness. And that's why in my second map, kind of went closer into it and looked at this one service planning area 4, in closer detail by the census tract level. And it became pretty clear that even though this is the most concentrated service planning area, the individuals experiencing homelessness were not confined to one particular area, but were kind of scattered around by census tract as well. And so in this gray outline, you can see the major city areas, and on the closer to the bottom right, you can see Skid Row, which has a very high density of individuals experiencing homelessness. And yeah, I decided that since this was looking at the homeless population at a more micro level, I wanted to also explore the relationship between incarceration and homelessness, and also whether or not homeless shelters and services made for individuals experiencing homelessness were in areas where they could be found. And it became pretty evident that currently homeless shelters are found in areas with higher densities of individuals experiencing homelessness. And similarly, it did exhibit it supported that notion that the relationship between incarceration and subsequent homelessness is well established, given that there was a really close proximity between jails and prisons, as well as high populations of individuals experiencing homelessness. Now, that is not to say that homelessness is caused by these factors. However, the data does suggest that there is a correlation, in at least where they're geographically located. Yeah, and so following the creation of these two chorocloth maps, I kind of went into it and looked at the different regions within LA County with the highest homeless populations. And the last map that I had on this website was something that I personally feel a lot about how homelessness is not a monolith. And that's why blanket policy simply will not cut it, because we cannot expect a measure that is, one size fit all to be able to work for all homeless individuals, because homelessness, there are different populations within the population of homeless individuals. There are different groups of homeless individuals, and these individual differences need to be taken into account for proper policies to be made. In this particular website, I looked at the difference in the two groups of homeless populations by sex. So female homelessness has actually been on the rise. And using this story map, this interactive story map was an opportunity to kind of explore the difference in the distribution of individuals experiencing homelessness by sex. So there's a slide or two in this story map, and I kind of like how it makes it easy to do a side-by-side comparison, and it made it pretty clear that there is a difference in where individuals experiencing homelessness by sex tend to be found. So there is a difference between where homeless females and homeless males are found. And I think this clearly exhibits that these differences need to be explored and taken into account when policies are made. Yeah, and lastly, because as I mentioned, this project was for my cartography class. At the end of this site, there's actually a short little screencast discussing the cartographic techniques and stylistic choices I made to make the maps in this webpage. So if you're interested in the more technical side of things, you can definitely watch this video. I hope you enjoyed listening to my voice. I don't know, but yeah. To kind of sum up, this website was fun for me because I've always been interested in looking closer in this issue of homelessness. However, I think what both Elizabeth and Bingri tapped on, it is difficult when data are not represented in a comprehensive and easy to view way. So coming up with this project, while it was painful in the sense that I had to do a lot of data wrangling, there was this great sense of accomplishment after, because now it's easy to visualize the trends. And I think moving forward, I really do hope that at the county level or even at the national level, we do look at using more spatial analysis when visualizing data. Yeah, thank you.
That was great, Claire. So, and maybe you mentioned this and I didn't hear it. What were you using for the data? Was it a point in time count or what? Where did the?
Yeah, I was using the point in time count by the LA Homeless Service Authority. So this was because this project was done in fall 2019. So I was using the data, the most recent data actually from 2018, which was available at that time. Yeah, and it was really great because this data is available on like the LASA portal, so it was very accessible. If I wanted to and I had more time, I could have even like done like a year-on-year analysis because they do release the data every year and it remains like available.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I know there's some faculty at UC San Diego that are also looking at homelessness in San Diego. And so it's understanding the data, right? Sort of what you uncovered here about the data and sort of the location and what's around. And, you know, is it a contributor? Is it something that just happens to be there? You know, like what other factors are around those populations, you know, that may be contributing to some of the diversity that you mentioned within the homeless population as well. There is a suggestion in the comments or the Q&A, and sort of, and I'll say this is, I appreciate comments because as we all learn how things go, and you know, using breaks for the count and the legend that are same for both males and females to make the comparison of those two, because I think I noticed that as well. It was fascinating to see, and then seeing just that the numbers of the homeless male count are higher. I mean, just within that one last category of.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
So, Jiwon, thank you for that. That's always helpful.
Yeah.
So, any other comments? And here comes another one. Jiwon also said, "Great talk," by the way. So that prefaces that. So, from Tara. Are there any programs in place to encourage those who are formerly incarcerated or otherwise system impacted to learn and utilize GIS as part of a career path? We can track them, but can they be involved as well?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. In my own experience of like volunteering with individuals experiencing homelessness within LA County, I know that currently there are a lot of apps that have to do with like what you said, like tracking, like kind of helping to find out where individuals experiencing homelessness are. But in terms of empowering these individuals to use GIS or teaching them the skills, I feel like that is sorely lacking. And perhaps one of the contributing reasons that I speculate might be the case has to do with, you know, just GIS not being easy, something really easy to pick up. Yeah, but I think it would be interesting if that was an avenue we could explore.
And then there's another comment in the thing about using equal intervals, right? We all have suggestions on ways. So I have another question in thinking, right? You recently graduated and now you're going on to your master's in social sciences. Are you looking at incorporating more GIS or into your work? And how has this project influenced sort of your future of what you're looking to do?
For sure. So the program I'm doing right now is a Master of Social Science, and it's very interdisciplinary in nature. And at the end of it, we kind of have a capstone project. And I'm definitely hoping to use whatever I learned in GIS into it. And it's interesting because right now I'm taking a quantitative research methods class, and my own background in GIS is really helpful because I can kind of complement what I'm learning in terms of like R coding, statistical analysis to GIS as well. So even though I only took GIS starting my sophomore year, it's definitely something I want to pursue more. And I think it has really shown me that data visualization and spatial visualization is something that's really good, and there's so much utility from it. So moving forward, like this project really was something that showed me like, hey, if I use GIS to I can really use it to like apply it to different things that I'm passionate about, and that really helps with research projects and everything. So yeah.
That's great. Yeah, so there's some more comments in the chat box as well, and so I think this was great to hear from all of you. So Claire, thank you so much, and I'll ask both Bingyu and Elizabeth to turn on their videos again and say thank you to everyone as part of this. And I don't know if there's any final questions that are from our audience or any comments on any of this. I think, you know, some great work from understanding sort of GIS for traffic simulation to urban planning and ADUs to understanding, you know, homelessness, which is a huge sort of issue, and how do people tackle it, and you know, what are the roots and how do we prevent it, but being able to look at all of these different dynamics spatially really helps us, I think, to provide a different lens into what's happening around our world. So yeah, great talks, and I don't know if any of you have any final parting words. I'll say, I think one of the things that I also heard from all of you, which was interesting, are just the variety of tools that you use. So I think Bingyu, you mentioned like Kepler GL, and you know, Claire, you use Google Sites, and Elizabeth, you were using sort of both story maps and others. And so I think there are so many different geospatial tools out there, and it's finding the right one that works for your project and going from there. And I think, you know, Bingyu, I'm interested to explore the Kepler GL a little bit more and see, you know, like what's useful. Because I think, thank you for sharing this. And I think, you know, the ideas we can learn from all of you and get feedback on our projects as well.
Thank you.
So,
thank you.
Yeah.
So do more GIS and take advantage of any software licenses that your campus offers. Now is a great time, since we're all home, to learn and freshen up our skills. I know Esri has a couple of free training courses, so yeah.
Yeah. So again, you can find all of the links to all of their fabulous posters online and be able to explore them interactively, or, you know, a little bit in closer detail afterwards. I know I'm excited to do that. So with that, I guess we can wrap it up if there's any other final questions. Otherwise, thank you all, both to the presenters and the attendees. And just a reminder that you can go in to the UC GIS Slack, find information, and sort of continue these conversations. So if you have a question later on, you can ask as well, and find out the next session. So next sessions start at 3 o'clock, and we'll go from there. So thank you, everyone. Enjoy, and we'll see you all here later today or tomorrow or Thursday. Okay, thanks everyone. Have a good day.